Taylor Swift became Taylor Swift because she's Taylor Swift. And I mean, sitting in a room with her and actually hearing her talk about her career and why she makes decisions and why she strategizes in a certain way, it's like you couldn't talk to managers with that level of thoughtfulness and strategy.
Clarity.
Yeah. It's no surprise she's where she is. You look at a Rihanna, you look at a B, you look at it's artists who really, really show up, but they've been showing up from the beginning.
Yeah.
They develop really great habits from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so those habits count. And I talk to artists regularly, and and I see sometimes where it's like, you know what, this person's a flake.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm straight up don't waste my time.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Manager's Playbook podcast series, a journey we're embarking on together to unlock the secrets of the music industry for aspiring artists, artist managers, and future executives. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a figure whose story not only inspires, but also offers invaluable insights into navigating the complex terrain of music and tech. The legendary Troy Carter. As we delve into Troy Carter's remarkable journey today, from shaping the careers of global superstars like John Legend, the aforementioned Lady Gaga, Eve, to identifying and nurturing artist managers of today and future executives of tomorrow, we'll uncover strategies, experience, and wisdom crucial for anyone looking to make their mark in the music industry through his journey. Troy has masterfully bridged the gap between art and technology, earning him a reputation as a forward-thinking mogul, entrepreneur, and visionary investor, making him a perfect guide for exploration into this dynamic world. Simply put, a conversation like this doesn't come cheap. And without further ado, the legendary Troy Carter.
You're a manager, you're an entrepreneur, VC, tech, angel investor. There's so many things that you do, and you do it incredibly well. You can go online, you can Wikipedia what he's done and who he's managed, but some of those people are Lady Gaga, Eve, John Legend, just to name a few. And he has us in his home here today, so thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming.
You've helped me out through my career as well, too, just giving me some advice throughout the years.
Vice versa, by the way.
He's being very nice, but
Vice versa.
I appreciate that. But what do you think is the role of a great artist manager in 2024?
I really think, for the most part, just on a foundational level, I don't think the role has changed much from the very beginning of artist management all the way up until now, in terms of protect and serve.
Yeah.
I think a great manager, their job is to protect that artist as much as possible and be of service to that artist as much as possible and be the best possible partner to them. And so, I think one of the things that has changed is just the landscape now. So before, where an artist, you would have a set group of partners. You would have, your record label, your publishing, your booking agent, and, and maybe a couple of endorsements or something like that. And now, just with artists having to be so self-sufficient now, the manager serves more of a CEO level role and organizing their entire infrastructure. So because artists now have to be content studios, they have to be marketers, they have to be all of these things.
Yep.
So I think there's a bit of a new level of complexity and nuance to being a manager. And so now managers you got to learn a lot more. You got to be really, really curious. And I think the job is, before it was 24/7, now it's like 48/14.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something you mentioned as well too. When you first started, you had to take the calls with the labels when you were an assistant with Jeff, was it? Will Smith?
With JL, Will Smith's manager.
Yeah, and the one thing that you learned is when you were on the conversations, and maybe go into that a little bit, they would talk about so many other things except the business at first. How important is that nuance when you're dealing with partners as an artist manager?
Yeah, I think I learned how, I think coming into the business, my assumption was you just make business transactions.
Yeah.
And when I was James Lassiter's assistant, I used to have to roll phone calls. So the idea was he would have a call sheet and he would say, hey, can you get XYZ from CAA on the phone? Or can you get this person from, Sony Studios on the phone? And I would have to get them on the phone, and then I would have to listen in on the phone calls, and then to be able to manage whatever follow-up was needed. And so learning, like hearing the conversations, I was surprised how personal the conversations were, where it would be about family or vacations and people really knew each other. Yeah. And then eventually it would get to the business or whatever, but it was about the relationship. Yeah. And James, he was so relationship driven that, the business was sort of secondary, but it was a reason why he's been able to maintain this level of success, over multiple decades because of the personal relationship and personal interaction. Because I think ultimately you got to be interested in people.
Yeah.
You really got to be interested in people.
I always say that this isn't the music business, this is the people business.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
How much of that do you nurture the relationships as well versus the business?
For me, it's probably in my own business, whether it's investing or whether it's, with my music company, it's 99% relationships at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, people can take their business anywhere. People can take money from anywhere in terms of investments as well. But it's that connection that you have and your commitment that you have to that relationship that actually makes people lean into that business relationship. So, and I think one of the things I learned too as I've gotten older, it's like it becomes more and more important who I do business with. So I think the personal relationship is really important to me.
Yeah, I had earlier in my career, I was same as you. It's important for me, the relationships that you're building. But I think one thing that after managing the biggest artist that I have, Jessie Reyes, was some of those relationships. I'm the type that was like, fight for everything for my artist.
Yeah.
Even if I disagree with my artist, nobody outside of our camp would know that, and I'm gonna be riding with it 100%. Yeah. But then that comes with some conflict with some people because they, labels will have their way of thinking about something, and you have, as a management team, you have your way of thinking about something, and sometimes you might potentially butt heads. So what I found to be somewhat tricky was when I had to be the bad cop with some of those other folks that were outside of our immediate team. Then afterwards, no longer managing that artist, those relationships weren't there anymore like that, or the phone call wasn't being picked up, which I understood as well too. I knew it was gonna happen. So I was like, navigating that over the last little bit has been like, it's challenging, right? And you're like,
I learned not to fight. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I was a bull in a china shop.
I said the same thing too. Yeah.
I was a bull in a china shop in the beginning, and actually the guy James, he gave me him and Jimmy Iovine gave me a very hard lesson in terms of where Jimmy told me, you either can learn this the right way or you could continue down this path and essentially be shut out.
So he saw how you were.
Oh yeah, because I was a bull in the china shop to Jimmy too.
To him as well.
Yeah, I was just it was indiscriminate.
It didn't matter who you were.
Didn't matter because that's how I thought you got things done.
Right.
But when I saw I was pissing people off, and one of the things that I ended up learning was, and this has worked for me in just business across the board, was just really learning what was important to my partners and what was important to my artists.
Yeah.
And if I have a clear understanding of what the partner's needs are, and I also have a clear understanding of what the needs are for my artists, I'm gonna find that middle ground.
Yeah.
And then there's gonna be times when there's not middle ground that I made so many deposits on this side, with our partners, that is going to be compromised on that middle ground. And the other piece is when the artist isn't right about something, and I know they're not right about something, but it's something that they absolutely believe in, I'm gonna support them 100% on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that being said, there's gonna be so many clear conversations with my partners having direct conversations with the artists to explain to them why they don't see it the same way. I'm gonna have a conversation on why I don't see it the same way. And then if we decide to move in that direction as that artist, all of us are moving together as one team.
Yeah.
Because it's that compromise. Like, it's been times when I've had artists who absolutely didn't want to do something that the label wanted to do, and the label was absolutely right. And and I've seen this with picking records. I've seen this with
Picking records a lot. Yeah, specifically. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that record is a smash. I know that artist didn't want that record,
Right,
but it's
right.
it's that thing of building trust. And so it's one of those things you learn. Sometimes it's trial by fire, trial by error. I've screwed up relationships in the past, learning it the hard way. And then it was some people who gave me a ton of grace that saw, some potential in me.
Yeah.
And the fact that I wasn't a bad guy as much as I was, just stupid or trying to learn the business a certain way or whatever.
Yeah.
And green. And Jimmy specifically was a guy who, gave me multiple chances as I was trying to figure it out.
What was it like working with Jimmy in those early days?
I miss it because it's we came up in a time when tough love and not getting your feelings hurt was a real thing, because if it was in the greater good of a project.
Yeah.
And so when you look at building superstars, that's a real alignment of partners between the chairman or chairwoman of the label, the manager, the top booking agents. All of these people sort of align to say we're committed, and then we go to the DSPs, we go to radio, we go to everybody telling this sort of collective story. Having a chair of a company like Jimmy, you got this sort of force of nature with decades of experience that's poured into this new manager like myself or this new artist like the artist that I represented, and so you sort of start shortcutting mistakes. So just as an example. I remember on Gaga's first tour, Jimmy came to the show, and when he heard the sound, he was like, "It sounds like she's singing into a can right now." He was like, "This is how you fix it." And he put me in touch with somebody who could help fix the show. But because this guy was one of the best engineers, it's like, that's
right.
You can lean into that. But when you don't have that level of mentorship, and the managers have to have the ability and the humility to be vulnerable enough to actually receive that information, no matter how hard it comes.
Yeah.
So that part, I feel like, a lot of people are sensitive to, their feelings being hurt or feeling disrespected or something along those lines. If somebody says, you're fucking up right now.
I've always had no problem with people telling me if I'm fucking up, especially if it comes from a good place, right? And it's like, especially if somebody's telling me this who's had decades of experience, even 5 or 10 years, because listen, you've clearly done something right.
Yep.
So if you're telling me how to correct those mistakes, I'm gonna listen, because you're on the path and the trajectory that I want to be at.
When I learned that my mentors have mentors, that part made me even more open at that point, because I'm like, you never stop learning. You never stop being open. You never stop seeking advice.
Something that I found really interesting that you just said is that you gave access to the partners, to your artist, to have those conversations with your artist. How did those relationships with those partners and those artists come about in a way where it was not forced? Because sometimes that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and sometimes it has to be forced in the beginning too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because you got some artists who aren't open to having that sort of relationship or want to have that direct dialogue.
Yeah.
And what I try to do as a manager is the same thing that I try to do when I mentor CEOs, like who are starting companies. I'm trying to turn an artist into a boss,
Yeah.
a CEO. So and because when an artist learns how to lead and learns how to be that boss and CEO, it makes my job as a manager much easier because now I have a partner. So because there's going to be times the artist a lot of times can get something out of somebody that the manager can't get.
100%.
So when you have that artist that can pick up the phone and talk to a CEO of a company, whether it's the CEO of a record label, whether it's the CEO of L'Oreal, or whether it's the CEO of Coca-Cola, is that becomes a powerful partnership because it's like you utilize each other. And you know, those are the rarities, you know, whether it's a Gaga, Taylor Swift, John Legend, Beyonce, Jay-Z, like you got artists who are actual, like really sophisticated business people. So it's like, but in the beginning, part of that is being able to give them access to deal with those people so they don't become reliant just on the artist, on the manager, to be this sort of translator. So and as a manager, when you can go in and explain complex things to your artists on why something can't happen or can't get done, and they understand that based off of these series of conversations and direct access, then it's like you got a partner.
Can you give an example of one of those complex situations that?
It's, you know, without giving names and specifics, it's everything from renegotiating deals, it's everything from closing deals, it's everything from, you know, building multi-million-dollar partnerships where it's like, because a lot of times outside of music, if you're dealing with a Fortune 500 company, they're very reluctant to do long-term deals and especially larger deals with music artists. When the CEO can have a direct conversation with that artist and they could go to lunch together, and or they can have a 1-hour meeting where I say, just get to know the person. Then when they see, oh my God, this person actually shows up and they're serious, it takes the conversation over the finish line at the end of the day.
And it also puts a face to the company because a lot of times you just think it's just this company, this big conglomerate. You don't think there's humans on the other side of it, but then you meet them and you're like, oh, okay, there's a connection here. There's a relationship that's being built.
Yep.
How do you identify a great artist?
You know, talent aside, you know, of course, like, whether it's songwriting, everything else.
Yep.
The work ethic is everything. Like whenever you have to drag people over the finish line to do the right thing for their careers, that's more than a red flag. That's just obvious of saying this person isn't going to get to the promised land. You know, they may have some success, but it won't be the level of success that it takes to win championships. And, you know, so when I look at the largest artists in the world, you know, some of them, you know, I either know or could sort of trace back watching them sort of from the beginning of their careers. And the level of work ethic and commitment and showing up is unmatched. And, you know, is millions of artists right now.
Yeah.
And to actually become the best in the world, like Taylor Swift became Taylor Swift because she's Taylor Swift. And I mean, sitting in a room with her and actually hearing her talk about her career and why she makes decisions and why she strategizes in a certain way, it's like you couldn't talk to managers with that level of thoughtfulness and strategy.
Clarity.
It's no surprise she's where she is. You look at a Rihanna. You look at a B, you look at it's artists who really, really show up, but they've been showing up from the beginning.
Yeah.
they develop really great habits from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so those habits count. And I talk to artists regularly, and and I see sometimes where it's like, you know what, this person's a flake. Like, and I'm straight up like, don't waste my time. Like, I got other things to do,
Right.
but other people got other things to do. So if you can't show up in a meaningful way, that's showing up for yourself in your own career. Why should other people show up for you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a very true thing. It's like, if I have to work or the management has to work harder or want it more than the artist, it's just not going to work. It just won't work.
I'm used to working with artists who are giving me a list of, these are the publications that I want to work with, or these are the partners that I want to have, or hey, did you call XYZ about such and such?
Yeah.
It's like is this sort of push,
Yeah.
and not the, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. It's like it's levels to it.
Or the expectation of, just waiting for something to happen for them because the manager's going to take care of it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, no, you need to take control of this career of yours, because you're going to only, management, label, everybody's going to only take it as far as you want to take it, and they can see that. People can read bullshit from a mile away in this business.
Now, I had a conversation recently with a label who they were complaining about this manager and who I know, and the artist, and they were complaining about the manager, and I said, don't worry about the manager, worry about the artist.
Yeah.
I said, because if that artist really, really, really wants it, that manager's not going to be around.
Right.
Because that artist isn't going to let anybody get in their way. I said, it's the artist that's not showing up. And it's the manager that's covering for that artist right now.
Yeah.
Because I know the situation.
Yeah.
I said, but you never worry about the manager. That's going to be temporary if that artist really wants it. If that artist is a real superstar who's driving his or her career, they're not letting a lazy manager get in their way. They're like, no, I'm going to hire the best.
Yeah. Now, when you find a great manager with a great artist and they're paired up, what are your thoughts at this day and age? As you mentioned, the manager has to be CEO, wear a lot of hats, the relationship with the partners, the labels, the DSPs, content, social strategists. There's so much that a manager has to think of now. Brands, of course. What are your thoughts on now, instead of this, what commissions versus the actual partnership between artist and manager where there's equity in the business?
Yeah, it could be done. It could be done so many different ways.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm seeing directionally is almost like this sort of hybrid. And what I like about it is that everybody's incentives are aligned. So if you got, like, one of the things, what we see a lot of times is that you have, if it's I won't even count this just as newer managers, I just think in general, if the manager doesn't think they're gonna be around long, they're doing as many deals as they could possibly do just to get their commissions.
Yeah.
But if a manager is part of that artist's business, is incentive alignment. So it's like, okay, I'm thinking a little bit more long term because this affects all of us if I give up this for that. Like, so I'm not gonna go do this stupid publishing deal and my artist is tied up for 10 years so I could get a 20% commission versus we're gonna hang in there a little longer and just do an admin deal or not sell our catalog or, just to build up this equity long term because we're co-owners in it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think it's just an incentive alignment.
Do you still take the approach in what you do now? Because you're not in management.
No, I do consulting.
You do consulting.
Yes.
But do you give consulting advice to managers to be the Mack truck to go through the cul-de-sac, as you say?
Yes. Yeah. Because you still, no matter what, you have to be a force.
Yeah.
You got to be a force.
Yeah.
So being that Mack truck through the cul-de-sac is getting things done. Like, can you actually get things done? If you got to close that deal, you got to close that deal. If you got to get this tour done. You got to get this tour done. So whatever that task is, your job is to go in and finish that task. And so, because that's what you're judged on at the end of the day. It's like, can you actually get it done?
Yeah, the results and the execution.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Because you can have the best intent in the world, but if you can't get it done, somebody else is going to get it done.
Ideas are ideas unless they get executed.
Absolutely.
Is that how you find great managers?
Yeah, you know, the great managers that I see now are like the most, like, who's the most curious? Who's the most curious? Who's learning about what the future holds? Who is finding new opportunities for their artists? Who's not being complacent? And that level of focus, and, you know, how can you sort of stay focused while you do it all?
Yeah.
And so, and the humility piece, like, because that piece is so important, because, like, I work with a few managers where they're super successful at what they do, but yet they're looking for more. They're like, how can I learn more? They're looking for those blind spots or whatever, and that's how you grow. Like, you know, and that's just every level you get to. You're finding, like, okay, what is that? Like, how do I get to that? How do I get to that next level? And honestly, like, I think this is sort of across our business what I see happening. Like, I watched the making of the We Are the World, the greatest night in pop.
We was watching that the other night.
Yeah, I watched it.
Fire, by the way.
And it's so funny. I texted Lionel after, like, it is.
That's Lionel Richie.
It's less star. Like, when you look at the star power that was in that room, those are real superstars. Every genre, real superstars. And even the newer artists that were in there, like, you know, the Cyndi Laupers, you know, like, superstars. And so one of the problems that we see now is that people think they're superstars before they're superstars. And managers think their artists are superstars, or the manager thinks he's a he or she's a superstar before they're superstars. So if you already think you're on that level, it's impossible to get to that level because you think that you're already there. And so you don't take in the information or move the way you move. And so even watching the Grammys, I'm like, when Taylor Swift walked into that room, when Jay and Beyonce walked into that room, you saw the separation of levels at that point. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the piece where you got to strive to get to this next place, but you got to have a level of self-awareness that you're not there and that your artist isn't there. And even once you get there, you're still trying to figure out what that next level is.
Yeah, and it's okay to think that you're a superstar artist or a superstar manager, I find. That delusion, as you talk about. But don't act like it.
That's it.
Make sure you don't present yourself that way because it's a different story if you do. I remember being Rock Nation Brunch in New York City, and I really saw, you know, everybody's there. So I want to say 2018. And yeah, a bunch of artists, stars, but when Hove would move, like literally take steps, the whole energy in that room moves. You saw the same thing with Beyonce. You saw Mariah Carey when she was in there. I was like, wow, they really affect energy in a different way. This is a whole other level than anybody in this room.
There's levels to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always find it fascinating to be, and you just stay observant and always watching. That's when we did the Raisin Space dinner with Shara and Zach. That's the one thing that Zach actually said. He was going around the room and he said to me, he's like, you know, do you mind if I be very honest and open? And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, of course. And he's like, you probably ask more questions about what a publishing deal is than what the advance in the deal was worth for me taking you out for dinner. It's like, you are forever curious. You're not afraid to ask any questions, whether you think they're stupid or not. And I've always approached it that way. Like, it doesn't matter to me if if it's a stupid question or not, I hope that I can get the answer from that person.
Yeah.
And if they feel like it's an idiotic question, I'm not supposed to be talking to that person.
Yeah.
So I always kind of take that approach. So I love that you say that as well too, as it comes to TikTok, UMG.
Yeah.
I'd just love to know your thoughts on that and where that's at right now.
I think it's probably one of the most important, is a pivotal moment in the music industry.
Yeah.
I think with UMG being the largest music company and with the most influence over these partners, this historically the music industry has given away our content for cheap,
Very.
compared to the value of the companies that we're helping create.
Yeah.
And I feel like leadership in the music industry hadn't been as responsible as founders of companies. Like, so when you look at a founder or you look at, the companies that are on the other side of these, they're looking at how do they maximize, shareholder value, essentially.
Yeah.
And when you look at the music companies, they haven't looked at how to maximize the real shareholder value, and those shareholders are the artists at the end of the day. And so if we're helping to build, we're helping to make billionaires off of our content by giving them these licenses. And the thing with TikTok is is an incredibly powerful platform. And when I look at their sort of response to the negotiation about being promotional value, that's not the right response to have, in terms of with this negotiation, because we're not looking for promotional value. We're looking for financial value as well as the promotional value, because artists are providing promotional value, by providing their content and bringing fans to the platform and all of those things. So, we're in this relationship where I don't think TikTok necessarily needs the music industry. I don't know if the music industry necessarily needs TikTok. It's a great vehicle to have because we've turned the keys over to TikTok, essentially. And TikTok, they're gonna find a way for music, but my kids aren't gonna leave TikTok because UMG's catalog isn't on it. Creators aren't gonna leave TikTok because UMG's catalog isn't on it. So we're gonna have to find this compromise between TikTok and the music industry. And with that being said, that's pretty much all technology companies that license music. We gotta find relationships, and we gotta find a symbiotic relationship that's beneficial for both sides, essentially.
What's at the root of it?
Money.
Yeah, for sure. But there's the pool that you were mentioning.
Oh yeah, so right now I think that the problem is I think the biggest problem is AI is going to have a huge impact across the world on everything. And when it comes to music creation, we'll be at a point within the next 18 months where creating really, really great music is going to be easy as creating a great photo on Instagram, just with a couple filters. The same way it used to have to be a really dope photographer to take pictures. Instagram, hit a couple buttons, you gotta
This thing, change it. Yeah, phone
changes everything. It's gonna be the same exact thing with music. So it's like, so if you're posting on TikTok or posting on Instagram or whatever platform, and you want a song to express whatever video you made or photo that you posted, you'll be able to create your own that is specific to your thing, but that sounds incredibly well. It's like a really great song. So other people could use that song, and if they're inspired by it or whatever. And just like Instagram that has all rights to your photos that you upload, these platforms will have all rights to the music that you create on these platforms, meaning that these platforms won't have to pay for music.
Yeah.
But they're trying to put that music all into one pool now. So it's like any AI creation or whatever, all of that is in the same royalty pool, music pool as everything else. So now all of a sudden, if creators on the AI side say we want XYZ, they participate the same exact way as a Drake, as a Travis, as whoever else is creating content on those platforms.
Wow. Which is, it's kind of interesting because artists are also competing for public attention with creators.
Yes.
So now not only are you competing with them in a public forum, but also when it comes to royalties and monetizing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be at this sort of intersection of this war between synthetic artists and real artists. And people won't be able to differentiate, like consumers won't be able to tell, is this a synthetic artist or if this is a real artist?
I think as time goes by, I think consumers won't even care.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's happening already.
Absolutely. Without a question.
Yeah.
Without a question.
So, I mean, last time we spoke, the AI conversation was very in its infancy. And for those who don't know, Troy spent a lot of time at Silicon Valley. You were going there with 2-3 times a week, just kind of understanding how that works and seeing, oh, this is a whole different relationship to business than we have in the music business. So you're well versed in that. Early investor in Uber, I believe, early investor in Spotify. Now we see AI. So you have a really good lens on what this looks like. And you spoke a little bit about it, but now a little bit more, how do you see AI really starting to, where do you see AI going in the next 5 years maybe? Hard to say, but.
Because 5 years is going to be the equivalent of 50 years because this is moving so fast. It's moving so fast. And, just what we're seeing already within our sort of everyday lives, one, it changes workflow forever.
Yeah.
I think engineering was sort of the first thing where we saw with Copilot on the engineering side, it makes writing code so much easier. And so like the fact that now, you don't have to, go to MIT or Stanford or Georgia Tech, wherever these places are to learn how to write code. You could literally go to ChatGPT and write code and it checks your code for you. But workflow is going to be amazing. We've experimented with AI agents, for instance, where I feel like it's going to replace, not in the beginning it won't replace, but it's going to make like the job of road managers, tour managers, like anybody who has to do any level of logistical planning is going to make their lives incredibly easier. So when you can route tours and it tells you exactly how the tour needs to be routed, from venue capacity to travel to fuel consumption to hotels to airline tickets, where it could book everything for you, is like
insanity.
Yeah, it's gonna go to this place of like just this. You put in the inputs and it spits out these outputs, immediately.
Right.
So what is that going to do for booking agents?
Right.
When you think about the job of booking agents and things like that, I think they're going to have to rethink how they work and how they look at their jobs. You look at even with managers, is gonna change the way a manager works, and because an artist will have a co-manager right at their side at all times, just with a bot. So it's like
it's your day-to-day AI.
Every day, anything that you want to know, you're going like this, and you're finding out instantly. So from your royalties, your scheduling, your things you should be doing, marketing is it's going to change all of these roles or whatever. So how we adapt as an industry and just as humans in general, the role that AI and robotics are going to play over the next decade is going to look like we're in a futuristic movie, but it happens in a way where it doesn't feel jolting.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel jolting.
Yeah. In present day, what does that tech stack look like? What are some tools do you think managers can use to their advantage to optimize their business?
OpenAI.
Yeah.
OpenAI, because it's super easy to use. Everybody's building on OpenAI. And so I think that's a good starting point. And then there's people on, like, in terms of actually learning it, it will tell you how to learn it. You ask the questions, it will tell you how to learn it. And the rate of speed that, when you look at when they first launched it to even where it is now, it's nowhere near where it's going to be now. But it is, the leaps from V1 to where we are now is like crazy. So I can't imagine where this thing's, it's going to.
And to be clear, you're not talking about just ChatGPT, you're talking about OpenAI.
OpenAI, ChatGPT, yeah.
Okay, so both of those. When you were at Spotify, you were talking to a lot of managers, having them understand the benefits of Spotify. You mentioned you went and spoke to a few managers to show them how to get to the money. How do you get to the money in 2024?
There's so many paths to the money in 2024.
What are a couple of,
I think, that being independent is Joe Budden said something to me. Me and him were in a conversation. I think it was like a Twitter rooms conversation, and he made this statement because he had left Spotify to do his own his thing on Patreon.
You're right.
And he said, Troy, I optimize for optionality. And I paused. I said, hold on. I said, you got to break that down. And basically what he was saying is like he negotiates for the future. And so that stuck with me in a way where I'm like, LeBron James does the same thing. So it's like when you're doing those short-term deals where it's like, okay, my deal's up in 2 years. Let me see where we are in 2 years. So with LeBron, when he was negotiating, looking at, okay, the collective bargaining agreement is going to change. TV rights are going to change. All of these things are going to change. So it's going to be more money when that changes. I'm going to bet on myself that I'm going to be healthy, that I'm still going to be LeBron James. And so when this short-term contract is up, I can get a lot more money than if I was to do this longer-term contract because the options are going to be different.
And you get to see the lay of land where it's
at. You
get
to see the lay of the land.
Yeah.
Independent music is the same thing. So it's like, so if you own your rights or you control your rights and can do whatever you want with those rights, there's going to be so many options that open up in the future. So it's like, I would be trying to figure out, how do I own publishing? How do I own masters? How do I have a significant amount of equity in any brand deals that I do? So everything would be about long-term to get to the money. So it's like, so it's not, because you're not going to get to the money really by taking, unless you're a hell of an investor and plan on making outside investments. But if you go and you do a deal with XYZ label, and let's say you take $3 million right now, right? By the time the artist is done, they'll probably net $1.2 million, 1.2 million when it's all said and done. And my guess is they're gonna wanna buy shit. So it's not like they're gonna take that and just invest it. So if $1.1 million is supposed to last you X amount of time, or if that ties your options up for, let's say, 3 or 4 albums, you could have made that $1.1 million off of one independent project if you're taking that bet on this. If you're taking the same bet on yourself that the label's taking on you for a very calculated reason. They're not just doing it because you're talented. They're doing it because they ran the numbers and they know you can make whatever they're giving you. They know you can make it.
You can make that back. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter when it is. So you believe that in the future, IP catalogs could be
100%. 100%. Like ownership will never go out of style. It'll never go out of style.
Even though with the pool of AI and all that coming into play?
Doesn't matter because you own it. So it's direct revenues. So it's like, so even if the pie is, no matter how the pie gets divided from DSPs or technology partners, the difference is if I own it, I'm getting the lion's share of it versus a label owning it and they're negotiating it and then they're giving me the pennies or whatever. And they're negotiating
Literally.
the way that they want to negotiate, that they get the best deals for themselves. They're not worried about your specific share.
right.
So it's like, so when you can negotiate your rights, or at least be able to negotiate alongside of a pool of rights that have the same interest alignment as you, then that's when I feel like, you got a better path to higher revenue.
And is that something that you encourage artist managers to also participate in?
Absolutely. Even if it's, whether it's with your artist or whether it's, finding ways to do it even outside of your artist where you can make those kind of bets on IP. This is with managers, because it's a service job, you get you become reliant on the artist essentially. And especially if you're focused around one artist or one or two artists, all your revenue is tied to those specific artists.
Yeah.
So at any given point, if you're not connected to those artists, those revenue streams go away. So if I co-found a company, I got equity in that company. So whether or not I'm with that company anymore, my equity still stands unless somebody buys the equity or whatever.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of sort of treating it the same way and making sure there's some level of ownership. And I feel like it for smart artists, they'll understand how the model works. So I feel like the entertainment lawyers honestly, I think a lot of them are behind the curve on this.
Man. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of them are behind the curve.
Yeah.
But I feel like I look at some of the most successful artists in the music industry and how their businesses are structured, and they're not structured like normal artists. They're not structured like that. They build infrastructure around them.
Well, that was the one thing I wanted to ask you, because you and I have a similar ethos when it comes to an artist and going deep with the artist, right? And not going too wide, right? But then how do you scale that, right?
Scale by going deep.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can actually, like if you manage BTS alone, your business is scaled. If you manage Bad Bunny alone, your business is scaled. If you manage Taylor, your business is scaled. Because it's like that level of deepness has created a tremendous amount of scale.
Yeah.
Is probably no bigger scales than some of those.
And important part of that as well too is developing actual partnerships with them, because if you do start to scale and there's another artist, making sure that I think it's important that that artist also feels like they have a part of that as well too. So so now it's not taking away from the artist, but adding to.
Because if you and the artist are starting at the same level, you're essentially both co-founders.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like
So there's in the tech world.
Yeah. So it's like you're figuring out like how are you building with each other?
Yeah.
And it's that mutual incentive alignment.
Yeah.
So you actually are able to to go even deeper with that artist if they feel like they're part of what you're doing.
Yeah. Any specifics when you're talking about starting out with that artist, co-founder? Like when you were working with Gaga, you were seeing the kids going around block for a small 1,500 person venue. Maybe it was smaller. How did you get from those venues to the arenas, the 20,000 person venue?
Hits number one.
Hits? Clear as day? Yeah.
Can't do it without the hits.
What's a hit look like today though?
A hit is a hit, a global phenomenon. Like, to get to that level.
Yeah.
I think, people mistake good records with hits. And I think it's a big difference between good records and hits.
Yeah.
And it's different definitions, to be honest with you, sort of based off of how far a song can drive you. And I think with going from like the smaller venues to bigger venues, it's not just rolling into those bigger venues. It's actually being able to build the demand, test that demand as well, make sure the act is actually ready to go into the bigger venue.
Super important.
Yeah, because everybody's not ready to play an arena.
Yeah.
Everybody's not ready to play a theater. So it's like actually being able to get comfortable enough, and also there's a level of connection and intimacy that you build with your fans in those smaller venues that's impossible to do if you're starting out in bigger places, because it's a very, very real human connection when people feel like they're part of that discovery process, when they feel like much closer or whatever, and they're not kind of watching you on a screen for that first time or whatever. And so, but it takes patience to build that and to say no to some of the offers, so even sometimes we'll put an artist, before we put them in larger venues by themselves, we'll have them open up for an act in a bigger venue just to get them used to how that feels. Stadiums is a totally different thing, because stadiums is a big disconnection, just the way is built. So if you're a person who gets your energy from that connection, because some performers, their performance energy comes from that connection.
Right.
When the stadium layout is built in a way where you're that far from the fans or whatever, it is a different type of show. So you got to get used to that. So it's just strategy that goes into it.
Yeah, that was I think you mentioned the strategy that you guys took. Gaga opened up for New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, her first tour was
First tour, very first tour?
No, that was her first big tour.
Okay.
But we did clubs, so we were doing probably under maybe 100 people in the club sort of thing, and then we did New Kids on the Block, which was they were doing arenas.
Yeah.
So she was the opening act, like 20 minutes, like with this much stage.
Yeah. You can't go here. You can't go here.
Yeah.
You got to stay right here.
Yeah.
If you move off there, we're gonna give you
all
shit.
the lights are there still on.
Yeah, they're all down. We're turning down the volume.
Yeah.
There's only a certain amount. Yeah. So all that. I love actually the fact, because I'm Canadian, so I got to shout out Canada. But you guys started the record. Was it Poker Face?
Just Dance started
Just
in
Dance.
Canada. Yeah, Canada was the first market that broke for us.
Do you remember what station it was in Canada?
I do not remember the station. It was Toronto, though.
I remember hearing that record
It was Toronto.
all the time on the radio.
Canada.
Nonstop.
But that's, a lot, like, we don't care where the smoke comes from as long as there's smoke. So it's like, sometimes you never know, like, we got some songs might start in like Indonesia or Vietnam, or like, these like places that you didn't intend for the record to go because you were working it here. But wherever that smoke comes from, follow that smoke.
How do you take that and bring it over here now? Being with, like, say, TikTok being a vehicle.
You take it where it wants to go. Like, so, because a lot, only thing we can do is tell the story of like what's happening here to the people that are here. So if something's happening in Indonesia and it's really happening, is a lot of times it's whoever we're talking to in the United States may not get it right away. If you're running YouTube or running Spotify or whatever else, it might not mean that much to you, but I can at least show you some traction that might be happening on your platform, that narrative and story.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, if there's 5,000 fans in Indonesia, my guess is there's going to be 50 fans in America, even if they're because what we saw with some records is that if it's happening in Vietnam and it's blowing up, it's some Vietnamese Americans that are on it as well too.
That's true.
So we see it sort of translate, through the cultures like that too.
Yeah, that's true. It's an important thing that I think a lot of people are thinking about too now, is the super fan, which you were talking about as well. I've always thought about that, just even like from a marketing aspect, capturing the data of the super fan. How important is that in this day and age, considering that the algorithms, the subscribers or the followers doesn't matter anymore. It's more so about how can you get those, in my opinion, how can you get those fans off of that platform directly into whether it's an SMS strategy, whether it's an email list. Can you talk a little bit about to that and how important that is, especially in this day and age?
Yeah, so it's like when you look at the biggest group in history were the Beatles.
Yeah.
and you think about the Beatles connection that they had with their fans, where like people are fainting and waiting at airports and everything. And back then it was no thing called CMS or, any data collection or
CMR,
anything like that. It was fan clubs and fan letters, and fans would write in, and you would get those fans' addresses, and then you would send them whatever back or whatever in fan mail. That connection still hasn't changed to this very, very, very day, because it's the way that people want to feel. So it's like, so we got better tools now. So, whether it's something as simple as the artist hearting a like and a comment that they might have seen on a social platform. That's the same thing. Or whether it's replying to that comment, or whether it's inviting them into a community based off of the level of fandom that you've seen. So it's going to be all types of ways for people to do it. So if you look at, it's some fan groups that have no official organization from the artists or the management team, that are some of the strongest fan bases out there, because they're self-organized.
Yep.
They will, you say something about this artist online, the whole community comes after you and everything else or whatever. And they're gonna buy the tickets, they're gonna buy the merch, they're gonna, do all of the things that you would want them to do. And then there's some like a Hybe, that Hybe does it really well, where Hybe is probably one of the most sophisticated companies when it comes to super fandom, data collection, engagement, tools, like all of those things or whatever. And they've been able to build an incredible business off of it. Yeah. So the most important thing is making sure that you have engagement with the super fans, that you recognize who they are, that you have engagement, and so Nicki Minaj is doing the same exact thing as Hybe, but just in a different way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I remember when it first started to go with Jesse, when I realized this was really, there's a couple of indicators, but the one where it was like the super fans were starting to get together, and then you follow them, and then you start to see photos that I've never seen before.
Oh yeah.
Quotes of Jesse that I've never seen before. I'm like, where is, and then you're talking, you're like, when did this happen?
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is moving at a different pace at this point.
Yeah.
It's incredible to see that. Are there, I do want to talk about Venice Music just a little bit, because I think it's an amazing tool. Can you give me basically what this looks like now for the artists or the independent artists now, specifically with so much optionality, as Joe Budden said? How do you present that for the artists and the managers with your platform?
Yeah, it's basically a community for artists to push their careers forward.
Yeah.
Like where, for me, as I looked at the independent landscape, it's like you got so many tools out there to distribute your music, but yet is more confusion in the market than ever. Every artist is trying to figure it out. Like, how do I get fans? How do I get my music on soundtracks or in a TV show? Or how do I find a manager or find collaborators or go on tour? So it's just more questions than there are answers. And I created Venice as just really a place to get answers. And so, we sort of have this one side that's about our sort of community, with our pro members. And basically that's that's this aspirational tier of artists that are taking their career seriously. They haven't gotten to that point where it's like they've really gotten to the promised land yet, but yet they're making the time and investments to do it. So we've sort of weeded out the hobbyists and the not so serious artists from the people that are actually wanting to lean in and really invest in their careers from a time and resource perspective. And then we have our services side, which I'm more closely involved in, which is dealing with independent artists and independent managers that are sort of looking to really take it to another level. So, how are we building our artists globally? How am I building my business and my infrastructure as a manager? How am I finding it's time for me to get an agent now, or how do I sort of thread all of this together? So our services side is about really threading that together.
That's amazing. I love that. 3 books, don't have to be anything to do with the music business, or it can, that you would recommend for an artist manager.
The Alchemist for sure.
Yes.
Um,
Start with that.
yeah, because it's about journeys,
Yeah.
which I love. There's a book called The Psychology of Money that I love.
Okay.
Probably one of the best books I read, and is really is not is about money, but is not necessarily about money. Is really about purpose and focus.
Yeah.
And I think for a manager is a really good tool to have in your kit, because it sort of helps you shed away noise, and that's a good one. And then David Geffen's book has always been a classic to me. And I've read it a million times. And I think David is one of the best managers in history that's ever done it. And so David's story is just beyond. And what I love about David's story is, because you'll read the book and you want to know, okay, what did he do after?
Yeah.
And everything that he's done after has probably surpassed everything that he did as a manager in media.
Philanthropy and everything.
Yeah.
What makes him so great, in your opinion?
David Geffen is just, and I'm not saying this lightly, he's the most brilliant business strategist that I think we've seen within our lifetime. So, when Steve Jobs goes to you for, as his mentor, and people like that go to you for advice, when Oprah goes to you for advice, when Jimmy goes to you for advice, Geffen is just, he's a master strategist.
That's amazing. Last question. What's next?
Who knows? I like to leave. I like to leave white space, man.
Yeah,
I like to leave white space. So, I've lived my life on this idea of flow, and going with the flow. Yeah. And I just continue to go with the flow, because I never know what opportunities are going to pop up, who's going to pop into my life. When luck decides to sprinkle some fairy dust, and sort of go from there.
I really love that, man. You keep yourself open to new ideas, new people, constantly downloading information from God, constantly downloading information from other individuals. I think you've been an amazing source for a lot of us over here in this business.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of that. Thank you for your time. If I'm taking one thing away from this, is that a lot has changed in terms of the tools of this business. But there are still a few things that still remain the same. That's the connection with the artist and the fans. Yeah. That is super important. And the hits.
And the hits.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
You got it.
Thank you so much for that. That was awesome.
Definitely.
Cool,
definitely.
Man. And that's good. I mean, yeah, man.
You got one. You got one.
I appreciate it.
This is
it's
gonna
good?
Be good. Yeah, this is gonna be good.
Good.
Man, I think it's much needed.